Hello, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League. My name is Peter Cinnamon, and it was another absolutely massive week in the title race. Larne continue their unflappable streak. Cliftonville pull it out of the bag late once again, but it was a slip from the leaders Linfield at home to the Swifts, which has cranked up this burner a full gear. How will they respond, and can the others keep their noses clean in the coming weeks? Outside of that, we're going to dive back into this fascinating scrum for 6th. Look ahead to Irish Cup 6th round weekend, as it's that time of the week once again. You're here, locked in to your latest edition of Kicking Match. What a vintage week of Irish League football, I think. From Friday to Saturday, plenty of twists and turns, excitement. One of those weekends where you're like glued to your phone. If you weren't at that game, you were sitting there going, oh my goodness, have you seen what's just happened? You thought it was going to go one way, and then you see one thing fly in, and either you were jumping for joy or your heart sank. It's why we love this league. It's why we love this sport. It's why we're sitting here with your headphones on or your speaker blaring, because you just want to hear more. You want to hear more chat about it. And this week, I've got a big gun to deliver you some big thoughts, opinions, and feelings for you all. Great to welcome back to the podcast, football journalist and writer with the Daily Mirror NI/Belfast Live. Hello, Steven Crawford.
Hello, Peter. How's it going?
I'm doing all right. Another week, and we're here chatting football. Once again, I'm sure all you ones that are tentatively associated with Coleraine have been worrying that you're going to get a wee ping from me in the inbox. But look, for once, I am not the scud. Coleraine win, and everything is fine on the North Coast.
Yeah, we can finally come out of hiding again. It's been a long time coming. No, look, it was one of those ones you knew it was going to happen eventually, and thankfully it's happened sooner rather than later. But yeah, a lot of big sighs of relief around the showgrounds.
That may have been the big news for anybody that is in blue and white of Coleraine, but I mean, where is there to start? There's only one place to start this week, and is Linfield, who are the team that get hit by a green shell. They're the one that hit the speed bump, and I knew that when this happened, I couldn't exactly take credit, but I said on the podcast last week, as much as I did back the Blues going in to a home fixture against Dungannon to win out, I did put a little asterisk beside it saying, if, and it really felt like when Linfield do slip up over the next few weeks, end up only being a few days later, I will be able to say we saw this coming, because be it Dungannon the last time they were there in the National Stadium, even the last time Linfield played Dungannon in the Cup, from Carrick, even against Crusaders when I saw them a week ago, Linfield are a team who have faced a couple of punches, a few jabs to the jaw, but they've always been able to set themselves, fight back, and get a result. But you could see there, if someone could stand their ground and hit them with an absolute haymaker, they were going to get the spoils. And that's exactly what Dungannon did. It was a sucker punch, but they came back from a goal down to win out 2-1 at Windsor Park. The first time in like 2 years that a team not called Larne or Glentoran win there. They've come close before, but they do it. And they have now properly blown this title race wide. Huge result on Saturday.
It was massive. Like, when I was listening to the radio while I was at our game, and you heard the scores coming in, and you just felt that penalty miss or penalty save. I should give Declan Dunn the credit. That could be a pivotal moment, and that's so it turned out to be. But you're right. They mentioned there Dungannon's previous performances against Linfield this season. I was at a couple of them, and they can count themselves unfortunate not to get something from those games. I think that gave them a lot of confidence going into Saturday's game, and I think Rob was very upset last week with the performance of his players against Portadown in the Mid-Ulster Cup final. And maybe that just galvanised them a wee bit and give them that sort of spur on that they needed. And as you say, it's a fantastic record Linfield have had it at Windsor. Not too many teams beat them there, and for Dungannon to go there on Saturday and pick up 3 points is fantastic. And I don't think that it was a fluke. I think in the second half they fully deserved it, and all credit to them.
Dungannon are a side that kind of could be that perfect cocktail to take down Linfield in the form that they're in. They are well happy to throw men forward, fly forward, they attack with gusto, but then when they're facing their own barrage of attacks, they are happy to get their backs against the wall and pretty much head any ball that moves, push anybody out of the way. They're proper old school when it comes to backs against the wall defending. And look, as you said, there was chances for Linfield to win this out. They take the lead. There is that penalty miss, but in turn, it's little minor mistakes which let the other team in. There's still a points difference. There's still plenty of games to go, but this was something that Linfield did not want to do. They should not be slipping up at home. And we'll talk about the other results there. The only thing David Healy can do is look at his players and say, hopefully you've got that out of your system, because there's only a few games to go, but they cannot be getting into some sort of form where these games start slipping away, because the good thing they've been able to do this season is that they've turned so-so performances into victories and into wins, but they got caught out.
Yeah, I think the one thing that stands on for good stead is when they've had a defeat, they usually bounce back straight away. And you just look at the game, the big two game at the Oval in the start of December, and as soon as that happened, everybody thinking disaster, but they bounce out back, and I think was it probably they've gone unbeaten since then, so I would say that'll be imposed by David this week that, look, boys, you have to get back on it again. You're in a title race. Larne are now 1 point behind you. You'd obviously want to be at the top of the league, but when it's Larne chasing you down, it's going to be a real thriller. And you can't rule out Cliftonville now. That result has pulled them back into it as well. So it's going to be a real exciting last couple of months.
We talk about a game which could be pivotal come the end of the season for Linfield. For Cliftonville, that victory could be the one, because it was a cold, dark Friday evening down at Taylor's Avenue, and as the minutes ticked by, it just felt as though everything that usually is just so scintillating and expressive and exciting from Cliftonville were just being shut out. Carrick Rangers were able to totally get the Reds out of their rhythm, and it took this big, long ball. I think even reference is not exactly what Cliftonville are all about last week, but I mean, it just took a big, long ball and probably one of the biggest players on the pitch, at least one of the bigger players in the green shirt of Cliftonville, to head in a last-minute goal and a winner. Like, it came to the point where even Carrick boss Stuart King wasn't that angry or frustrated by the way the result had went, because he was so happy with the way that his team had played. But there's no points given out after 90 minutes, 94 minutes. It was just in the absolute dying seconds, and the scenes there at Taylor's Avenue, I mean, that is what following a team is all about. The jubilation was just electrifying watching it at home.
Yeah, and like for the second time for it to happen in a fortnight, like after what happened at Newry, those things don't happen by chance. Teams don't just pull them out of the bag. That's a mentality thing, and the Cliftonville probably weren't at their best on the night. You have to give Carrick a lot of credit for that, because they defended stoutly. They took the game to Cliftonville, were throwing their bodies in their line, and it looked like as if they were going to come away with a well-earned point. And then obviously there was a bit of debate about the free kick. Carrick felt it shouldn't have been a free kick. But I know, speaking to Stuart afterwards, he was very disappointed with the defending of the set piece. He felt, it was too easy for Cliftonville to get and score. And as you say, those celebration scenes, little did they realise, less than 24 hours later, how big a result it would be in terms of the title race. And, their tails are up now, and it's certainly going to be a thrilling end of the season. So it is.
We talk about how Linfield recently have been able to get results when they're not firing with all their weapons, in full form. Cliftonville played against teams that they really should be beating, or at least earlier in the season they'd be thumping in Carrick and Newry, and they have somewhat got away with it too. And it's amazing the way the seasons went on. Cliftonville have always been up there around the top of the league, and we've kind of felt as though at some point they'll fall away, and we're now getting to the point where we're so close to the end. We're just a game or two away from single figures. It's still a lot of football to be played here, but they are absolutely in the race. They're right there now, up for it. And I mean, what a great turnaround for them to win out on Friday night, and then for Linfield to lose. They weren't the only team that was jubilant about that result on Saturday, because Larne also went out on Friday, and I guess it wasn't as dramatic. It's Larne showing how efficient they are about this season. I mean, only one loss all year. They go about their business with an efficiency which is slightly terrifying.
Yeah, they just have this resolve about them now. Funny, after the County Shield final last week, I spoke to Tiernan about this sort of strength they have about them now, whereas in previous seasons, Larne were sort of castigated for being this football at all costs and knocking it about. Whereas now they seem to have this age about them where they can pull themselves back from going a goal down or being pegged back and can go and get results because that was a tough. Then Torrance Tails were up in the final and well, it took a lot for them to come back in and win that. And I think this is the thing about Larne now. Your star so strong. Like 3-0 against Newry at home on Friday night, as you say, it was just like tick, there's another one ticked off, and there's another one ticked off. And you just see Larne can just have in that role of momentum, and I think these games coming up in this final section between Linfield, Larne, and Cliftonville are going to be pivotal.
They're just going to be blockbuster every week. And as these games come at them, they're all going to have something on the line. For Larne, like, it's a 3-0 victory for them at home, and they're going against the worst defence in the league. And, look, Barry Gray has a big job there for Newry. We can talk about the teams at the top that they're in there. There's only a few games to go. Even though we're here pretty much at the end of January, a team like Newry with it all to do and teams to catch, I mean, they weren't expected to get a result from this game, but they are running out of road ever so slightly. They can take this game, put it in a box, and just hope that they learn from it. And it's fair to say they made some significant mistakes to help Larne on their way to victory, but they need to sharpen up and sharpen up quick because, as we've seen elsewhere in the league, with wins coming from teams above them, they need to start collecting points themselves, or they could be cut adrift.
Yeah, like I think when you look at the grand scheme of things, Friday night's game is not going to define their season. As you say, going to Larne, you're not expecting to get anything. Probably maybe slightly disappointed with the world performance, but you scrub that off and you move on. The big one for them now is coming up in a couple of weeks' time when Ballymena come to Newry on the Friday night. That if Newry have to win that game to have any chance of reeling in Ballymena, I think Dungannon are too far gone now from the bottom two. It's going to be who finishes 12th and who finishes 11th now. And Newry, I think, will be focusing. I know they have a cup game coming this Saturday, but that is the game that they have to be focusing on if they're going to give themselves a chance of survival. Lose that game, and I think it's going to be very, very tough for them to make up any ground.
For Newry fans now, and I guess the opposite could be for Ballymena, they now have two teams to support. They've got their own team to win out every week, and then whoever happens to be playing Ballymena, they are the biggest fan. They'll be bringing two scarves. But one thing I want to say about this game, because maybe it somewhat shows my ignorance as an onlooker from football rather than someone that anyway is engaged with it on a professional level, but the penalty decision, was it Georgie Poynton is the one that gives away a foul, holding back a player, but beyond the line? Then it was a penalty because it's still in the area of the box. Like, when you saw that, you're like, that's going to be a penalty straight away. Or were you like, oh, I never really thought of what would happen if there was a foul there?
Yeah, I think like yourself, I never ever thought about it because it's not something you see happening. I think it's probably the first time I've ever seen it happen. And I know our colleague Gareth McCulloch, avid Newry fan, was a bit annoyed about the decision, but he retracted his comments and said, yeah, a referee did get it right in the end up, but he felt there was maybe a foul on the Newry player beforehand. But it just shows us that we can all follow football and all maybe know all the rules all the time. So maybe we are a bit too harsh on referees sometimes.
We'll see how it goes later on. Sticking with Newry, they have brought in a few more bodies. We'll see if they'll sneak a few more in before the end of January. They bring in Mitchell to shore things up at the back. In goals, you've got Stephen Ball, who can be an impressive player, and then Jimmy McDonough is a player who hasn't played consistently Irish League football for perhaps the guts of 2 seasons, but I mean, if they can unlock something from him, that will give them a dynamic out wide that few teams around them, and I guess there's probably only Ballymena is the only team around them right now, that could be a big difference maker going forward.
Yeah, like you just have to go back a couple of seasons and you think probably Jamie McDonough was up there with the very best in the league. For he was winning games from his own for Cliftonville, and he was the reason behind their success when they took Linfield. Basically, I think it was the last game of the season for the title. If they can get anywhere near that player again, he's going to have a massive impact for them. Obviously, he's a chap who's come through his own struggles. He had that horrendous injury, earlier on in the season. He's on Dungannon, and hopefully he's getting back to full fitness again now. But he can win a game, and when you're down at the bottom, you need guys that can produce that moments of magic. And I think Adam Sally is a guy that can score you goals. Big Connor Mitchell's come in at the other end. Can he help shore up the defence? It's really at both ends of the pitch is where they need it now, and I think Barry might have one or two maybe up his sleeve before the window closes. He has a vast array of contacts in north and south of the border, so it wouldn't surprise me to see a Madden Day squad.
Larne, you actually see the debut of Roshan Williams, a player who has a significant amount of experience actually in the lower leagues of England, last playing some football in League One. So they are continuing to add some players who weren't absolute keystones of their team, the likes of Farquhar moving on. That Larne team is a factory, and particularly when it comes to the youth side of things, that they know that there's going to be a decent amount of turnover if things are going well. And not that Williams is a like for like replacement for Farquhar, but they bring him in. I almost described it on Twitter like flipping a house. They bring him in for Ballymena during the summer, and less than 6 months later, he's away to Crystal Palace. Great thing to see. We always want to see young Irish League players move on. It's good for everybody in the league. I think for so long we've seen so many players locally who haven't had the chance to go to Scotland or to England to go professional based on a bit of a stigma around the players. Part of that was the fact that it was part-time and it's such a big move beyond the Irish League, but more and more that we see players like this move across, and the bigger success they are, I think it will give players the confidence to stick with Irish League football. And I think it raises the tide. More players sold, more money goes back into the players' pockets then, raises wages, raises everything. More investment is only good for the league. And for Larne, it's clear that they see a way to make back all this money invested is going to be through player sales, and so far you can see it going straight back into the team. So all the best to Farquhar away in London.
100%. And I think Larne have a very clear strategy. Obviously, there's young guys coming through their academies, which you would maybe see moving on before they ever even maybe get near the Larne first team. And then you have people like Farquhar, who maybe that wee bit older, who get their opportunity. And I think it's always nice to see a guy that's played in the league being noticed, because sometimes we don't really know these young guys that are moving on to England, Scotland, wherever. But to actually see a guy that's played and played well, and those scouts are taking notice of this. Like, I remember going back to Garth McCauley moving from Coleraine to Lincoln, and back in those days, hardly anybody got a move over. Whereas in the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a real influx of guys from the Irish League over playing the full-time teams and Premier League teams, and fantastic. And I wish them all the best, because it only helps highlight the league further. And you mentioned there about Roshan Williams. It makes you think. I wonder if Mr. Rashford will be attending any more Larne games. He might not get you Thompsons anymore, but he might be a regular visitor at Windsor Park come before the end of the season again.
I tell you what, it does really remind me of Football Manager, where after a few years, the logistics of players, it kind of loses the run of itself, and you see, like, I don't know, I always remember seeing Sammy Amiobi randomly turning up for an Irish League team, thinking, what has gone on? That would never happen. But look, here we are in a world where we've seen like Niall McGinn come back and all the rest. Like Gail Bingarama, like as someone who follows Newcastle, like to see him play Irish League football week in and week out just seems utterly bizarre. But a team that knows what it's like to lose a young prospect and get an investment in there is Cliftonville, and being as successful as they are, teams continue to sniff around players in this team, and as they try to go for this title, will they have to balance the books? We talk about chat about the interest that's been in Ben Wilson. Will he be there, particularly with his contract coming up at the end of the summer? There's only a few more days to see if that happens in January. One that's now being touted in the paper is Turner moving to a League of Ireland side. His contract is also up in the summer. You saw that Larne were able to take Chris Gallagher from them, so I think they'll find it tough. They've sold a player to get cash in now to potentially impact the team short term. Will they keep doing that? If you're a Cliftonville fan right now, do you go, you know what, We need to think long term and maybe cashing in on a player like Turner, even Mallon, if bids come through. Is that what we need to do? Or it's really, really hard to get in this position where they are right now with only a few more games to go. This is why you're a fan. This is why you build these teams. Forget about the future. We need to go for it right now. And if we fail, so what?
I know it's so difficult when you are, putting a team together and you are having success, and then next thing, you maybe end up losing 2 or 3 of your key players. I think the Luke Turner one's an interesting one because obviously the League of Ireland season is starting very soon, and the clubs will be wanting to finalise their squads, and I would be worried that Luke Turner could go because obviously he is in the final few months of his contract, and if he has to move, he probably would want to be there for the full season. With no St Pat's and Bows have both been linked with him. Ben Wilson is probably someone that they will see the season out. What happens after that, we're not sure yet, but he'll be under no shortage of admirers, so it'll be tough in Cliftonville. But you look at what Jim's done, like it's likes of Sean Stewart coming in. You mentioned Oran Casey earlier. He's really taken his chance. So with one player goes, it gives the opportunity to someone else. And Jim's got a lot of contacts in the game. He's a lot of young players that he's known through the years. And I'm sure he's already looking at how he can strengthen with or without these other guys.
So sitting now as our top three, we have Linfield on 65, Larne 1 point behind them on 64, and Cliftonville are on 64 points off Larne, 5 points off Linfield, but with a game in hand. All to play for. Cliftonville are the side right atop of that form table, 5 wins in a row. And it's interesting just looking at the way they've set up their seasons, because for Linfield, they're the highest scorers just by 1 goal above Cliftonville, but they've conceded relatively far more than the other teams on 28 goals. I mean, when it comes to the top 6, Coleraine are an outlier right now, and to be honest, that 6th position is going to be the real battle between now and the end of the season. But that's, compare that to Larne 16, Cliftonville 15. Like that is the big difference there right now, but they are still high up the league. That's why they're still the top goal scorers. Cliftonville 59, 1 off them. Larne 55 goals scored. So you can see when it comes to goal difference, Cliftonville actually are the team that have the biggest positives there. But the one stat which kind of weirdly jumped out to me was that Larne have only lost once this season in the league. They've drawn 7, and they're as relevant as anything. It doesn't really matter about draws or losses. How it comes is all points. But there's something almost scary about that stat compared to the other ones, because both Linfield and Cliftonville have lost 4 times in the league. It's like anytime Larne, like a shot has went at the Larne, only once has it hit.
It's a remarkable record, and it's something that's probably been building for the last 2 or 3 seasons with Larne, and I think, especially at home, they are so strong. When a lot of people say about the Friday night games and this, that, and the other, but it suits them. And they've built that there for them. And going there on a Friday night for most teams is daunting. You know what I mean? But Larne are now in a position where they probably don't fear going anywhere in the league. In their way form, so it doesn't surprise me they've only lost 1 game this season. I think Linfield, you mentioned there about their defensive record. That was always something that Linfield were very, very strong for. Was they didn't concede many goals. They were very, very strong at the back. They probably struggled in terms of getting a settled back four in for a lot of the season. But I'm sure David Haley will be saying to them, look, guys, we have to become harder to beat. We have to stop giving away silly goals. And even at home this year, they've conceded a few that he wouldn't be happy with. You know what I mean? And like the last time Dungannon Swiss came to Windsor, they scored 3. And then they scored 2, so there's 5 goals at home to Dungannon Swiss this season, which is, for Linfield standards, probably isn't good enough.
It's funny because Dungannon have been the spoke in the wheel for Larne, as much as you can be a spoke in the wheel for Larne this season. We all remember that 4-4 at the start of the season. They were like the bogey team for Cliftonville last year, and now they've come back to haunt their rivals. Maybe it'll be Cliftonville's turn at some point between now and the end of the season, but let's talk about the last team that did beat Larne in the league. That's right, everybody. Loughgall, the team that beat them all the way back on the 26th of September. Madness. And I mean, big win for them. I talked about it last week saying that, if they could win out at Ballymena, that point swing could pretty much seal the deal for them and any relegation issues this season. They have looked really strong for a number of weeks, even months now. All they needed to do was to avoid a collapse. They've completely avoided that. A 1-0 win, a bit of a scruffy game, but it now sets them up on 31 points, Ballymena on 18. You twin that with the surprise victory for the Swifts at Windsor, and I mean, Ballymena are looking up 9 points between them and getting out of this relegation playoff spot. Is it too early to say? It's playoff is pretty much the best they can hope for, even at this stage with well over 10 games to go.
No, I think as I said earlier, like when you look at the teams like Dungannon, Loughgall, Carrick, Glenavon, Coleraine, they're all picking up wins. I know Coleraine only picked up the first there in a while, but they're all capable of winning. Ballymena have struggled for wins all season. Newry have struggled for wins all season, and suddenly you're asking them to maybe go on 1, 3, 4 on a bounce whenever the games are getting few and far between. So I think realistically, barring an absolute miracle, it's going to be 11 and 12 for Newry and Ballymena. I think when you go back to Lock Goal there, if you'd have told them at the start of the season that come the end of January, you'd pretty much be safe in the Premiership in their first season back. I'm sure you maybe would have had a few. Are you joking? Looks, you know what I mean. So they must be sitting absolutely delighted with where they're at. But it's not, again, it's not by chance. They're a good side. They're well drilled and they work hard for each other. And they deserve all the success they've got. I think it's been a breath of fresh air coming into the league, and it just shows you what you can achieve. People talk about money, this and that and the other, but they're up there and probably, I'd say, probably the smallest budget in the league. And they're beating all these teams, as you mentioned. The last team to beat Larne. If that goes to the end of the season, that'll be some achievement for them. They're the only team to beat them all year.
Well, it is all about these one-on-one games. This is how football goes. Like, you can only beat the team in front of you, but to a certain extent, this position that Loughgall has built has been significantly at the expense of Ballymena. 9 points they've taken off them this season, and that's a big difference, and it's a big whack of just the difference in those two teams. It's why they're there, and look, it doesn't take a lot to encourage me to start going on about how great this Loughgall side is. It was not one of their absolute classics against Ballymena, but they stuck in. They frustrated Ballymena at home, and I believe the last time I actually saw these two teams face, it was Ferris. He was causing a bit of trouble, and it's a big header to get the goal, and in these tight games, that's all you need. And I wonder, how does that set up Ballymena now, because they had that nice little spurt around Christmas time that's fallen away, 3 losses in a row in the league, and particularly with this Newry game, it's not a classic 6-pointer, but there's 6 points difference, and a win either way is going to be really significant. Will Newry enjoy being the team that's chasing them? I guess you always want to be the side with the points, but you also don't want to be playing with fear. It's a difficult thing, and look, what a rookie here for Jim Irvine. This has been a tough task. We all knew that coming into the summer, but not for the first time this season. He's going to have to go and show what he's made of here.
It's such a pivotal game, and it's one of those games. Do Ballymena go? Do they stick or twist? As you say, they're an advantage at the minute, 6 points lead. Do they go and be defensive and try and nullify Newry, or do you go and try and win the game and extend your own lead? It's a real catch-22 situation, but it could in some ways be a classic as well, because to me, I think both teams just need to go and try and win the game. You know what I mean? Because for Newry, their opportunities are running slim. If they could pick up 3 points against Ballymena, suddenly that gives everybody a lift. And you're thinking here, boys, there's a chance we still have to play them once more this season as well. So it's going to be an interesting game. And as you say, Ballymena have just hit a bit of a sticky patch again, probably at the wrong time this season.
A win for Newry, and despite there being a significant amount of games, it at least keeps it in their own hands. Each team could lose out the rest of it, and as long as they win that game on Saturday, they can get a result against Ballymena, and they can crawl it back again in the split. So a lot going on there, and to a certain extent Newry are used to this. We saw them in big games last season against Portadown, against Dungannon, and especially late on, because they went through a torrid run during the middle of the season last year, very much the same way they've done this year. It's a different team, different manager, but there is a decent nucleus of this side that were able to show up in the big games, ride the wave, and they're going to have to use all of that experience, recall all those experiences, and go again. And I wonder, Ballymena, who's not used to being around this part of the league, will they have the mettle? Will they have the gumption? And it's going to be, there's a lot of questions going to be asked of both these sides between now and the end of the season. And I know for both these sides, the idea of relegation or that playoff has been a very strong reality from very early on. But as the games tick by, it starts to become even more real. But let's sneak back up into the top half and a game between Crusaders and Glentoran. These two teams aren't creating absolute magic on the pitch, but there's been plenty of news, plenty of headlines that are generated each time these two teams play. Not always for great reasons, but on this occasion, after a really long stint, I heard where, and I can kind of imagine it being the case, where Glentoran are not able to get anything from Seaview. They win out once again. And it's Bobby Burns going back to the scene where he had that awful jaw injury. And he's the man late in the game in injury time to secure the points. There's a lot of story to reflect on before we get to that goal. But for Glentoran, it doesn't really change much this season, but every game is there to be won, and one of their key men in Burns is at the centre of it, popping it over the goalkeeper to steal it late on.
Yeah, it was a big one for them, obviously coming back after the Cruise had pegged them back. And David Fisher, I've been told that he likes to be called David. So in case somebody thinks I'm trying to put on my best French accent there, but that's his fifth goal now in the last three games, and he really is a man of form. Took that goal so well on Saturday. But credit the Cruise, they fought back and deservedly drew level, but he just couldn't hold on in the end. And I know you're probably going to touch on it. There was a bit of a controversy with their officials again,
I mean, I've talked a decent amount over the past few weeks. People will know we first talked about actually a game concerning Crusaders where they don't get a call go their way for maybe two penalties, which they were looking for. I thought they should have got one. Then last week, it got brought up again just about refereeing decisions in the League Cup semis and all the rest. And as much as there wasn't as much on the line as those League Cup games and how impactful they were, as a straight up decision, I'm watching it. I mean, I was completely blown away. I must say, if I was a Crusaders fan, I mean, this decision won't haunt me for the impact that it has, but I mean, trust issues will be difficult to build back up again. I know it just seems like a pile-on, and this is not about the individual referee here. I guess it is. I think that decision, and I'll talk about it in a second, was really poor. And I think it's a fundamentally wrong decision. The decision was that the ball came in from the right-hand side for the Cruise. It's a high ball from Stuart Nixon. He gets taken out. There's no denying that. But the ball sails into the box, into a big clump of bodies. And then there is Ben Kennedy that got high above everybody else to head it in. It was a competitive scrum. The goalkeeper went for it. And it took until the ball was pretty much going to hit those players in the box for then the referee to blow the foul. And that meant the goal was discounted. And we always get frustrated when advantage isn't played. But I mean, half the advantage has already been played. Let it play on. See where it goes. We see in football at the highest level now. Things that seem absolutely obvious are being played to their final conclusion, because no matter what happens after it, it can always be called back. Perhaps the referee in this decision, Tim Marshall, had a different view on it, but it was fundamentally a really, really poor decision in my eyes. Advantage should have been played, and Crusaders should have had a goal. To me, it's irrelevant if it was to have an impact on the game. I just looked at it and I felt so frustrated. And if the Crews were my team, I'd be tearing my hair out.
We all know referees are human, they're going to make mistakes. But as you rightly say, we see in England now with offside calls, the ball's let run right through, even when the guy's blatantly offside until they make a decision. So I don't see why the ball wasn't allowed to finish. When he puts the ball in, as you say, let it run. It's going straight into the danger area. Let it play out. If it goes out for a corner or keeper claims it, you can always call the play back. They blow it up practically straight away before we see what happens. It's one of those ones you just know that someone's going to come off it, and of course the Crews go and score. So I don't know what the referee's thinking or rationale for it was, why he didn't wait. I'm sure Stephen Baxter probably looked for an answer after the game. I can understand that he probably was very, very frustrated, especially off the back of the decision against Larne. But when you're down there, it's a true saying, all these things seem to go against you. And that was a key stage of the game. Like if Crusaders pull that goal back, then suddenly their tails are up and then go on and maybe get the second goal. But it had a massive bearing on the game.
When decisions like this are happening, and some of them can be questioned, some can be close calls, different opinions here or there, but anybody that I've talked to about it, their view is this is a clear mistake. And it comes back to what I'm seeing online and people talking about online, the idea of communication between even maybe assessors or referees. I know it's not really in play, I get that, but as a fans, I guess I have to just express what I'm hearing. There is this urge of like, somebody needs to say this out loud. This was a mistake. We can all move on. We all have to deal with it. I guess we don't want to deal with it as fans if it's against your team, but I think we just have to address that it's a mistake, and it was significant. Look, that's what assessors are for. I guess that's all has to be handled in house, and away we go. And let's actually talk about something I did want to talk about positively. Fisher, you talked about him there. I mean, Glentoran had this search. They were looking for someone that could change things up for them going forward. And in recent times, it is Fisher who has taken his chance, and I just really like him as a player. He's like a real predator. He has great movement. He's got a rapid shot on him, and he's got a bit of burst to him as well. And on this form, you got to play him every week. You got to include him. I know there's talk that he may have already potentially agreed a contract with another team. So if he stays with Glentoran long term, we'll have to see. But sometimes when you're looking for some new bit of juice, some spark externally, it's pretty handy when you have a big squad like Glentoran that you can find it by chance sitting on your bench.
Yeah, like obviously it was a bit of an unknown when he came in the summertime, and he probably had to bide his time a bit, to get his opportunity. He was getting a few minutes here and there, and maybe the jury was out on him for a while. But realistically, over the last probably 6 weeks, he's been their go-to man. Like obviously, he scored the hat trick against Coleraine, took his goals very well that day. Scored again in the County Antrim Shield final there, another good goal. And then on Saturday, I thought it was great movement, super finish. Like he does give you a wee bit more. He's got bit of pace about him. He's a big lad. I know Warren Finney is keen to keep him at the Oval, but as you say, clubs in England probably sniffing around him. He's only 21. He's got a lot of potential. So I think probably his ultimate aim would be back in England. But you never know. Like I'm sure the Glens are trying to work with him. Be a big loss to the Glens because strikers are hard to get, So, but say from now to the end of the season, I think that he'll be utilised a lot more by the Glens.
Going back to the Crews, look, they've just got to get themselves set up for a playoff. They are pretty much nailed on for that to be the case. It would be very surprising if we don't see these two teams play again in a big game sometime later on in the season, post-split. But look, I've talked here about the idea that Crusaders are, as every team wants to do, reset, add a bit of something extra. They've brought in Stuart Nixon, and I thought once again it was another good showing from him. Gets the goal, hits the bar, delivered the cross for the non-goal, and while they're still without Heatley, and ultimately Heatley won't be there forever. I don't think he's a like-for-like replacement, but he's filling in the team nicely. Jay Boyd, as much as he hasn't been able to show what he can really do in the red and black of Crusaders just yet, they're still backing him based on what he was able to do for Loughgall, and he signed a long-term contract with the Crews. Ben Kennedy's slipping back into the team, so despite some of the negatives and the fogs, there's still positives there for Crusaders. And let's talk about them. The team who have all these new names in. They've got a bit of a financial boost there with funding from the IFA to help upgrade their stadium. Actually, Newry and Crusaders also got that money. But in the week where we're close to this takeover finally happening, there was a bit of light at the end of the tunnel for the Crews. They went out against Glenavon at home to stop the rut. And it's Jim McGonigal's back and he's scoring goals. Great to see if you're a fan of the Bandsiders.
Yeah, it was he could. I'm surprised he didn't hear the sigh of relief up in Belfast whenever they scored in the 89th minute. It looked like it maybe would have been a draw, and probably maybe you could argue a draw would have been a fair result between the two sides. It was a nip and tuck game, and it was remarkable. Both keepers who had swapped over in January had very impressive games against their former employers. And as I say, it looked like as if it was going to be a goalless draw, but Jamie just shows what Jamie's capable of. Popped up in the 89th minute, composed finish. The week before, he had missed a good chance against Carrick when it was 0-0, and I know that was sort of wearing heavy on him, but he was determined to put this one away, and that's what Coleraine needed. You know, they have a lot of players back from injury now, key players. The new guys are bedding in, and they'll be looking now to build on this because it's been a disastrous last 6-7 weeks for them. But it wasn't for the want of trying, you know. And there's been some poor results. Obviously, the Glentoran one sticks out, it's 6-0. But the guys were hurting from it, you know, and the manager was hurting from it, and they were determined they put it right. And Saturday was a lot better. They looked a lot better, and they just have to take confidence now from getting that win and getting those defeats off their back.
What was it about that run? That win might just be a tiny slither of brightness, and then it may continue on beyond this week. But for Coleraine, for someone that sees them fairly regularly, was it just that things weren't working tactically? Was it not the right mix of bodies? Did they just need that freshening up of the side? They got it, and it just took a game or two to get the likes of McGonigal, Scott and Brown properly acclimatised.
I think it's been a combination of different things. Losing Stephen O'Donnell and Matthew Shevlin and Joyce Carson, that's three big players out of your team who have played only a handful of games this season, right down the spine. Getting those boys back to full fitness is a major boost. And I think once you start losing a couple of games, the confidence just drains out of everybody. And it just seemed to be every week, it was just poor goals they were conceding, and they weren't taking their chances at the other end. I think there's been no magic wand. It's not like you can suddenly go in and go, right, that's everything fixed. You know, it's up to the players now. Like, Bourne is in the game long enough to know this is one win, but it means nothing in the grand scheme of things. It's about now putting a series of wins or, you know, not losing games behind them. They have two tough games coming up after the Cup with Cliftonville and Linfield. That will be a big tester to see where they're at in terms of the season now. But I think they're just showing those shoots of recovery again where, you know, getting those key players back and getting the new signings better, and it just looks a bit more about them. And, you know, they're maybe aging back slightly towards a team that people know what they're capable of again.
Touching on Glenavon, it's another difficult outing for them. They missed out last week due to the Glentoran game being knocked off due to the weather, and this game it felt as though for them they just couldn't get things going up top. It's been a struggle, and they've showed flashes of a bit of imagination. You know, we all know what Peter Campbell can do. They've added in, you know, Duna and others, but they're still not a team that have a huge amount of firepower in reserve, and firepower who has consistently done it in this league. So they're testing out different formulas, and it's in places worked. Here it hasn't, and you know, this loss will be difficult because it sends you to a direct rival now in this little scrum that we see in the middle of the table. Do you think this is a team that can figure it out? Like when it comes right now, we see Carrick are able to run Cliftonville close, and they're gunning now to get one of these two European slots. Loughgall are in a good position because they've got that game in hand. You know, Dungannon, could they go for a late run? Like, Gavin feels like they could either go on a run here, or they could be the team that's the odd man out, really.
Yeah, you mentioned a few names there. I was very impressed with Dungan in the first half on Saturday. It was the first time I'd watched him. But you're right, they're missing someone that can put the ball in the back of the net. Like they created two or three really good opportunities, and I think Rory Brown only had one real, good save to make during the day. And I think that's probably what Steve McDonnell will be looking to address. I don't think in January he's looking to bring any more in. It'll be the summertime before they probably can do business, and it could harm them slightly if they don't have someone that can put the chances away in these crucial games coming up. I mean, you look around, the other teams are in that battle with, Carrick have three or four good strikers, Coleraine have strikers, then Gannon are scoring goals, Loughgall have Benji McGee who's banging on for fun. And if you're not going to score goals, you're not going to win games. So they need to find someone that's going to hit the back of the net on a regular basis.
And look the difference there. You know, a team in Coleraine who have found it tough against everybody, and it is a new signing. It's a striker. We know what he can do in this league, but you got to give Jay McGonigal some shine. I know Oren was talking about how he needs maybe a few weeks to get himself back up to full fitness and get used to this league. But that goal was his and his alone. He did all the work down that left hand side. And when watching it, I thought, is he going to find somebody? He had the confidence and the ability to take that on and beat the keeper. And it was a big goal late on, and I'm sure it absolutely delighted all of the Coleraine fans at the showgrounds.
It's joking me Warren afterwards about, was it the perfect time to score? And he said, yeah, because there wasn't that much time left to go. Like, so when you're on that run, you just want to score and get out of there, so that was a perfect. But you mentioned there about Jamie. Jamie's ability's never been in doubt. He scored goals no matter who he's played for. And it was an interesting shift on Saturday in the second half. Warren put him out the left hand side, and he was causing Glenavon problems cutting in there. And it showed you on Saturday when Lee Lynch plays him in right at the end, that burst of pace to get away from defenders. And it was a good composed finish, because when you're bearing down on goal and you have that much time to think, sometimes you can end up putting it anywhere else but the back of the net. But he showed what he's about, and I think he's going to be a big player for Coleraine going forward, because he was probably a wee bit sour about how things ended for him at Derry City. So I'd say he'll want to show people that he's got plenty of life in him yet, and he's got plenty of goal scoring ability about him.
So let's talk about something that was really big at the end of the summer transfer window. We're now sitting here at the end of the January transfer window. Coleraine have brought in a few players. I doubt any of this news will impact things one way or the other. Takeover, almost there. What does it mean? And if it does come through, is there likely to be any further changes beyond what the current team setup is?
Yeah, from what I've been told now, it's very, very close. There's just a few minor formalities just to sign off on, and obviously it's been a long time coming, but these things are never straightforward. You look at the Manchester United takeover in the Premier League now. Obviously, you're dealing with bigger clubs and this, that, and the other, but they all have to be ratified and stuff. So it'll be good to get it done. I think it's been hanging over the club for a while, and it's probably not helped. There will be probably a few of the squad which full-time football doesn't suit. So there'll be probably a bit of a rebuilding there. I think when you look at what Orange brought in the last 2 or 3 windows, it's probably moving towards that full-time setup. I think the coaching staff, probably there'll be a bit of a shake-up there as well. But I think ultimately the club want to make this move. They've got a lot of promising young players coming through the academy as well. So it's probably good that it's still going to be done and give them a summer to give a good rattle at it, but they maybe would have wanted a bit more fun in January to maybe go out and strengthen the squad further. But I think it bodes good time for Coleraine if they can get it right on and off the pitch. Like, they're very keen to develop things off the pitch as well, and they'll be hoping now that this can kick them on to a lower level.
What is the fans' expectation at the minute? Because it's been interesting about what their talk is going to happen and what has officially been confirmed. We still haven't got the actual takeover signed, seal, delivered in the hand to a certain extent. Like, Is there a feeling from fans that they're expecting full time football? They're expecting a big overhaul, or what's the feeling at the showgrounds?
Yeah, I think yes, obviously full time football is what you know what the goal is from the club, and this is why they've moved to get investment in, is they help them to progress towards that, and when you look at the league now, bar Cliftonville's excellent season this year, like Larne and Linfield just seem to be getting that wee bit stronger every year, and the benefits of full time football that way. But it's financially as well. Like you have to be able to compete with these players now. I think everything's raised in the Irish League in the last probably 18, 24 months in terms of players' expectations and salary, and it's opened up a bit of a window to think, well, we can look further afield now. You look at Larne and what they've done and bringing in the likes of Andy Ryan, Sean Munt, players like that there who, you can look at Scotland now and look for more players. You don't have to just look within, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, whatever. You can open up your horizons. So I think Oran has been very keen to look at that and say that, there maybe does need to be a widening of horizons in terms of players and, look further afield. And he feels that maybe he's been hamstrung with budgets because in the past, players' expectations, they are looking full-time wages and clubs just aren't in a position to offer that. Whereas hopefully now Coleraine will be in the positions to attract those quality of players and be able to pay them what the going rate is.
Obviously, a big help to any club's funds would be a little trip in Europe, thanks to the pennies that come their way for that. It would be a significant run they would have to go on to get that, but seeing all those teams as you do week in and week out, we have Coleraine, Loughgall, Glenavon, Carrick, and maybe even Dungannon as a dark horse in there. Do you have a favourite right now who you think is going to steal that sixth, and then who might be able to finish out seventh? Because that looks like it's going to be outside of the title race, one of the more intriguing stories between now and May.
I don't think you can pick one team at the moment. I think, they've all got their positives, they've all got their negatives, and um, it's so hard to call. Like you just look around them. I don't think anybody's had terrific consistency throughout the season. Um, it's going to be the last, 12, 13 games now, who can come to the fore. I think Coleraine, if they can get a bit of confidence of this winning result, they've maybe got the better squad out of the teams. But again, it's about producing it on the pitch. It doesn't guarantee anything. But I think every one of those five teams are all in the mix, and that could come down to the last few games before the split, how that's all going to pan out.
Especially with the split, as I talked about last week, there's like two leagues. There's like a race to sixth now, and then it's who can keep it consistently to the end of the season to get that seventh, and you're in the mix there. So, fascinating stuff, and it's definitely the one thing about the season. It's one little new quirk and development that I've really, really enjoyed. Right, Irish Cup weekend again come round. I know every team isn't in it, but we're now in the sixth round, final 16, and we've got a few tasty little games to look forward to. None more than just peak Irish Cup stuff here. Ballymacash host Glentoran. I'm looking forward to watching and seeing what this looks like on TV down the Friday night. And, Ballymacash has been this intriguing story for anybody that's been following the league for decades now, because they're another one of these teams that have popped up out of nowhere and are now really ambitious and trying to push on. And this is their biggest spotlight yet on the TV. Here comes Glentoran. And I mean, they have nothing to lose. And it would be a big, big turnaround for them to do it. What they'll need is them to be playing to the best of their ability, and they'll probably need their opponents to somewhat shoot themselves in the foot. And with it being Glentoran, it's one of the top teams that are probably the most likely to do it, but surely they have the skill and ability to take out a PIL team, no?
It's a fantastic game, isn't it? And we talk about the romance of the cup, and that's got everything there. But I think when you look at the FA Cup this weekend, uh, you don't need to look any further than Ipswich and Maidstone. That gives Ballymacash a lot of hope that you can beat these teams. Just as you say, you need everything to fall in your lap on the day, but they've got nothing to lose. I think Forsyth, it's a great story that he grew up as a Glen man, and it's a nice for him to to be able to embrace this whole thing. Glen Torn come to the Bluebell, but they'll be relishing it. They've got nothing to lose. They go out on front of TV cameras and give it their all and see where it takes them in the end.
I mean, it's a team that has the likes of Bam Neeson in goals, Joshua Cahoon, probably a bit of a deep cut for some people. Aaron Duke's in that side, Christopher Crane, Benny Eon, who was scoring big goals reported out near the end of the season. So they've got some Premiership experience alongside, a couple of worthy fighters in there. So look, it's going to be a great occasion, and like I said, it's all in Glentoran's hands to lose, and the fact that it's down there at the Bluebell could be very interesting. Keys to victory, if there's going to be any, it's got to be 0-0 at half time for Ballymacash, and then just see what happens in that second half. We've seen the Glens wobble in the cup before, but I must say, despite the occasion, I do think that the Glens are doing all right. They're scoring goals, and they should be victorious here.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's going to be a big ask for Ballymacash, but as you say, it's just about staying in the game, see what happens come the end of the 90 minutes.
Elsewhere, if there was going to be shocks, it might be Newington against Newry. I mean, Newington had such a great start to the championship season this year, falling away, lose Zach Barr, but they're going against a team in Newry who, outside of that victory in the last round of the cup, um, haven't been able to score goals consistently, keep them out at the other end. Once again, pressure's all on Newry. In the same kind of way for Ballymacash, if Newington can keep this close, they'll be in with a shout with it. But differently to Ballymacash, I think Newington will attack this game and have been able to score goals consistently. And, I think the big thing for whoever gets in that championship promotion relegation spot, either Newry or Ballymena, unless they're able to build up a lot of steam, they are going to be going against, in the championship, one of Portadown, Dundela, Bangor, or Institute, who are hungry and are exciting and are fighting. And Newington are just on the fringe of that, and I think could provide them a game. I think this could be the first real building block for Barry Gray to establish what he wants his Newry side to be. A win here, they can take it there. Might be a bit close, but I'm going to say 2-1 Newry.
Yeah, when you look at it, it does have a potential banana skin for Newry, especially when you look at the last round. They sneaked past, they sneaked into the sixth round, and it just depends how much their attention is diverted to the Ballymena game. They could end up. Did they focus on the Ballymena game? Maybe take their eye off the ball here, but you just don't know. But I would say Barry will probably want them to get a win in this game and build towards the Ballymena game, give everybody a bit of confidence. So the cup run just gives everybody that bit of momentum. That could be something that galvanises Newry for the rest of the season, but it won't be easy. As you say, Newington have been a form team in the championship. Maybe not as tight at the back as other teams, but they'll definitely pose a few problems to Newry on the day.
Another real form team in the championship right now is Institute. They brought in this January transfer window. What a turnaround! I mean, this was a team struggling for their championship lives this time last year, and now they're sitting up there top of the league, and they bring in Daniel Lafferty into that team. They bring in Cal McGinty, McGill Kennedy. I mean, these are Premiership players, let's be fair, and it just shows the great catchment area the Institute have, and they're going to go on a run right now, and standing in the way of going on a run in the cup is Ards. Been a tricky team for them this season, and after that victory against previous holders in Crusaders, I mean, Ards will be feared in every cup game that they have now.
Well, that's it. Like, when Ards have really completed their shot, like, the Institute are a team that they know well. As you say, you look at that Institute side, uh, they were already flying, and they've added two or three big names to the squad. That's whether or not, again, if you look and say, is the Irish Cup their priority this season, or are they going to focus on trying to get promotion? I would say at home they'll be all out. They won the game. And I just think they'll have too much for ours in the end up, so they will. They just get that bit more quality about them.
I agree with you. I think Institute will win out despite odds making things awkward for them, especially up at the Brandywell. Before we get to our four all Premiership ties, or three Premiership ties, an interesting little encounter here. Portadown, who have been gangbusters in all the cups this year, despite their league form being rocky. They have got a League Cup final against Linfield to look forward to in March. They've beaten every single Premiership side they've faced this year in cup competition. But what awaits them now is something where they haven't been comfortable in when it comes to the situation, being the favourites and being the favourites at home. They take on Bangor, who are unbeaten in over 10 games now in the Championship. This could be a bit of a thriller and could be very, very close.
Yeah, the Ports are still on for the quadruple, so they are after their mid-Ulster Cup one there last week. So no, fair play to them, as you say. They've had some brilliant results in the cup competitions already this season. I think this game could go all the way. I was at their last round at when Ports won to Carrick and won on penalties, and I think this one could go to another penalty shootout. Two sides slugging it out in the championship, and I'm sure there'll be no quarter asked or given whenever Niall and Lee Finney's on the touchlines, and both will want to come out with sort of the bragging rights to give themselves a bit of a momentum and a kick towards the end of the season. And I just think it's going to be a real cup tie atmosphere. Like, I'm really looking forward to that game.
They've had plenty of cup games recently, and I would say, just based on form, I think this is Bangors to win here. I think they'll win out 1-0. Might need it to be extra time, I agree. But I mean, they could do to Portadown what Portadown have been doing to every other team in the cup, and just have that bit more never say die attitude, and we'll just go for the juggler a bit more, risk it, and I think they'll win out at Shamrock Park. Shifts against Ballyclare comrades. I mean, Dungannon have been great in cup competition recently, and I don't think they should have too much to fear from Ballyclare, especially losing Calvin McCurry to Ballymena United there in the past week or so. So I mean, Ballyclare, decent championship side, but especially after beating Linfield, I think Dungannon will do the business here.
Yeah, and I think obviously they'll be buoyed from their fantastic one at Windsor Park. So I would say Rod will be keen to progress in the competition as much as they can. They've got a home draw against Ballyclare, as you say. They've lost to Alvin McCurry, and that's at that level when you lose a key player like that, it's always hard to keep things going. But I'd say the Swifts will win through in the end.
Could we have two mega shocks at Windsor Park in two successive weekends? Spoiler alert, I don't think so. But Ballymena will want to do it, win for the first time since black and white TVs were the regular. Not really. But Linfield could shake off all the bad juju of that loss to Dungannon by winning out in the cup against a side that they usually tear apart at their home of the National Stadium. Linfield, big favourites here. I could see them run away with this if they're in form.
Yeah, probably not the ideal match for Ballymena at the moment in terms of they're facing a wounded animal in Linfield. Like their tails will go up. I'm sure they'll be ramming it into them all week saying, boys, you have to put it right from last Saturday. You sort of fear for Ballymena if Linfield could get an early goal, then it could be a long afternoon, but it's probably not going to define Ballymena's season. So it's not. So they just have to look at it and say it's a game. We just have to go and play it and see what happens at the end of it.
First time in what, 3 seasons where if they lose out, where they'll be put out of the cup, not in the final after beating Crusaders both times. But I think for Linfield, what you'll see is exactly that. I think they'll go from the very start, and I think if they can get themselves on top of Ballymena, they will be relentless. They'll score to prove a point. They'll score if they can break down that Ballymena. I just don't think they'll drop their intensity, because to a certain extent that's what happened against Dungannon. They got ahead, they let Dungannon in. Linfield are going to go 1-0, don't care, 0-0. 3-0, don't care, 0-0. David will push his side to do that. So, and I think they'll win out there. Larne, Glenavon. I mean, Glenavon still have this difficulty scoring goals. Larne usually don't slip up, even if it's on a Saturday afternoon. I'm trying to see a way that Glenavon can somehow manipulate things and take out Larne, but I've just got to back the home side here.
Yeah, like we were speaking earlier about Larne and their impressive, results so far this season. Only lost one game in the league and one game in the League Cup. It's for all Glenavon's great work in recent weeks. I just can't see them getting a result at Larne. Like it's one of those days where no matter what they do, and their lack of goals probably will impact on them. But Larne are my tips for the cup this year, and I think they'll have the fire in their bellies to go on and win it.
This is the final game of this long last 16. Cliftonville host Loughgall. We've seen Cliftonville struggle, but still went out against Newry and against Carrick. For Loughgall, they go into this game knowing that to a certain extent that there's no league ramifications on the line. They can play their own game. They see that Cliftonville aren't a well-oiled machine right now, and we saw how last year, despite being on a hot streak, it was Dungannon who went to Cliftonville and won out in the cup. And that's the one thing that Cliftonville could be worried about here. I think this will be a really entertaining game between these two teams. Either could win. And I think I'm going to maybe edge it to Loughgall just to sneak it through. The fresher side, maybe, they could take victory here. We shock.
It's going to be a fascinating game, and we all know Cliftonville struggles with the Irish Cup. Remarkable thing that this club hasn't won it since 1979, and I think that wears heavy on the players, no matter how many squads have come and gone since then. And I think that pressure, and especially being at home, if they don't get off to a good start, uh, you know, suddenly everybody gets anxious, and not all have nothing to lose. Like they're going in there in good form, and as you say, probably Premiership's safety assured, so they can go and enjoy the day and see where it takes them. Whereas that's it's just hanging over Cliftonville. So Cliftonville will be determined to get an early goal and just ease the worries, but doesn't ease out as that. As we saw last year, as you rightly said, with Dungannon. Dungannon pulled off up a massive shock, So I think it's going to be a very tight game, but I think the Reds just might edge it in the end. But I do see it being a very tight affair.
Fascinating. Looking forward to another cracking weekend of Irish League football. All fingers crossed. Great to have you back, Steven. Before you go, plug things that you write, say, and do. I know people want to find out more.
Yeah, on Twitter is Steven R. Crawford. If anybody likes to read my daily ramblings on the Irish League, it's always good to get a bit of interaction with the fans and see what their thoughts on things are, because I think we're also a very close knit league and between the fans and everybody works on it. So it's nice to get a bit of chat, a bit of banter going with everybody.
By the time the next podcast comes, the January transfer window will have slammed shut because it doesn't shut in any other type of fashion. While we don't know any last minute deals that could or might not happen, I think recently we've seen actually the last day has put some pressure on teams. We've seen some back and forward deals, but right now is the one that you've seen this January that you think could be a big difference maker. Maybe not akin to the big Andy Ryan one, which was the absolute winner come the end of the season of what really won the January transfer window. But has there been a move that you've particularly liked that might not be clear to be a winner right now, but you think long term will be looked back upon as an excellent bit of business? Has there been a team that's won the January transfer window with one player?
I think it's been quite a quiet window when you look at it as a whole. I don't think there's been a lot of business, but I think Larne, again, you have to look at them and say, look, impressive going and getting Cricky Gallagher, like is one of the top young midfielders in the league, and add it to their vast array of talent that they've already have, and how quickly did they move? Craig Farquhar was out the door, and they've had his replacement announced as well. So they don't hang about when they're doing their business. Ethan McGee, I think, he's probably come in at Linfield under the radar a bit. He's just filtering into that side. I think long term he's going to be a very good addition for Linfield. And I think for Cliftonville, probably keeping their main man in January is the best bit of business they'll do.
He famously said,
yeah, so
on the 29th.
That's it. So they'll have a sweat all until is it February yet? So if they start our man, that'll be key for them.
Excellent. Steven, until next time, chat soon.
Pleasure.
I am just back from the wonderful, exciting land that was Paris, the city of of Lights, as they call it. Had a wee lovely time. Wasn't watching football, as you can imagine. I was having a lovely little few days away with the good wife of Kicking Match, and we had a lovely time. Highly recommend it. I'll say this, Eiffel Tower looks great. Class. Photographs are cool. Seeing it there, like far away in the city. Pretty cool. And I didn't know this, they have like a big bat symbol kind of thing. Have like a big, almost a lighthouse kind of like vibe where it spins around. You can see it from absolutely miles. It's very cool. Like I said, didn't see any football, but it was cool. I would highly recommend. I pretty much ate my whole body weight in, like, you know, chips and steak / croissants. So like I'm kind of got a wee taste for it. Like I obviously don't want to get rid of the burger van, but if somebody was to come in and like do, I don't know, croissants and coffee, that'd be kind of cool. It would suit me down to the ground. I think crap van's a bit too much, but you know, croissants might be sweet. There's actually quite a nice van at Glenavon if you're ever in the home end, which I'm sure is a very small part of you. But yeah, it's kind of a cool hipster guy that does decent coffee and baked goods. I think maybe I've got that wrong. No, I haven't. It's good. It's good time. It's all good. But for some reason you might be away in February. I know you won't be, but it's a good transition to say you might want to keep up to date with all the Irish League stuff. And if you do, you know the Kicking Match is a good place to do that. After you've listened, you might want to follow my little quippy remarks online. You can do that via @KickingMatch on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. You can also subscribe or follow this podcast if you wish. It means you get the most up-to-date notifications about this very pod. You know about it first before anybody else. It's free. It's all good. Just go onto either Spotify or Apple Podcasts and you're able to click a little button and you're all sorted. That's pretty much me for the week. Not going anywhere fun this week, bar I know an Irish Cup game. So I look forward to that. See you next week. As always, you better be there. Alright? See you then. Or else.